Hi, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Lead with Love. I'm your host, Chris Greco, and I have a special guest. I have my first ever author of a book. This is just unbelievably fantastic. And this guy, he wrote this book based on his experiences. Now, the thing is, experience and knowledge, all the sharing aspects and everything else. Now, his name is Carl Goodwill. His but I'm gonna let him kind of introduce himself and his book. But read the book from cover to cover. It's a great book. It's a great read. Highly recommend it, especially for dads. I'm a dad, and I take a look at his book and I think, "Gosh darn, I could have done this better." But it's okay because it's all about experience aspects and everything else. And so it's all about being a dad. Now this guy that I'm about to introduce is he has decades of teaching and counseling experience uh, with public schools in New York State. He graduated from Edinburgh State University in Pennsylvania, and he got his master's, and he can go into his master's degree and everything else. He has three kids, three boys, and we'll let him discuss the three boys aspect and what they've done with their lives. But without further ado, I'd like to introduce him, Carl Goodwill. Carl, thank you so much for coming on the show. Really appreciate the time.
Chris, thank you. I respect what you're doing. You're doing a lot of good with this lead with L.O.V.E, and it's so fitting to be the encourager and trying to get support people in their daily lives. And I respect and appreciate what you're doing with your program here in your podcast. Thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. So before we talk about the books or the book, let's talk about your experience as a dad. So you're the father of
Yeah,
three boys. Why don't you say a little bit about them?
yeah. Well, three sons. They're doing well. I'm very thankful for the lives they're leading. Got a guy who's a PhD instructor in civil and environmental engineering. He's my oldest. He's University of in the East here. Another guy, he's in Hollywood. He's a background actor. He just finished up with the This Is Us television show, which some of you might know. He's also a precision driver in Hollywood. And my youngest guy is a major in the Army. He's in the infantry and uh, doing very well there too. So I'm very thankful for all three boys. They're doing a good job.
And that makes, because there are three of your sons, that makes you the dad. So let's talk about this for a second. Let's talk about let's talk about your book. So why don't you introduce your book?
Yeah, the dad school. So Chris, I recognized the problem and I wanted to try to do something about it. Um, Statistics tell us from the Pew Research Center, and from the U.S. Census Bureau, statistics indicate a correlation between fatherlessness and or what is sometimes called father absence, and a host of negative consequences for kids. Now, it doesn't show cause. You can live in a home as a child and your dad is not present or otherwise not supporting you, and you can things can go well for you. So this is a causal situation, but there is a strong positive correlation, meaning the tendency. If you studied 10,000 instances of children being raised without their fathers, there would be a tendency for negative behaviors and negative effects on those children. Poverty, uh, criminal activity, substance abuse, dropping out of high school, more, teenage pregnancy, I could go on. So I look over this situation and I say, what can Carl Goodwill do about it? I was a guidance counselor. I attempted to work with children in these situations my entire career. I was a instructor, an adjunct college instructor, or I attempted to train others in the human services areas on how to remedy these things. But simply put, um, I think it was Thoreau who said, uh, while many are hacking at the branches, no one's hacking at the root. So the root of this problem, in my view, is fatherlessness, sometimes called dad deprivation. And it does have a high correlation with negative effects on children. And the Dad School, the book, is my attempt to try to do something about it.
Okay. So let's and that goes directly to what the first question is. So, we talk about learn, offer, value, educate. Basically, that's the love aspect of the whole thing. So, who helped you learn your talents? Where did you learn your talents? To be, I mean, you wrote a book,
Yeah.
man.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I would say I learned from my children. My wife, Monica, is great. Um, so helpful in so many respects. From the experience of being a guidance counselor. Um, from my education, I have a bachelor's degree, a master's degree, a couple of certificates of advanced study and education. The whole idea of people who influenced me. Uh, I really think that music has influenced me, especially the lyrics of songs, poetry, um, using a few words to say big things. Um, I feel like that has added to me. Quotes from other people, people throughout time who have come up with big ideas but said them in few words. Um, those are, I think, influences on me. My music teacher, Rosemary Obert, what a wonderful person. Um, my guidance counselor from high school, who I later became a guidance counselor, Frank Minicelli, a pastor from my background, Reverend Ray Linza. All these people, I think, influenced me. And if I have any talent for saying anything, I think the talent came from being influenced by those people and those ideas. Few words, but better words. And trying to say things concisely, accurately, um, and as an educator, just trying to make uh, ideas that are kind of hard to understand, try to make them understandable. Um, I suppose that would be an answer to the question who helped me
Yeah,
learn
I
my
mean,
talents.
I mean, and this, to segue into that next area, you talked about all these things you've learned, and it sounds to me like through the Dad School book that you've offered that type of philosophy to others through the book, right? And so
Yeah,
what do you offer? What do you offer people from this book? Let's say
yeah.
from the Dad School, what do you offer them?
Well, the book is based in learning theory by Edgar Dale. And Dale says basically that people remember 10% of what they read, uh, a higher percentage of what they discuss and talk about, and a higher level if they take an action based on that. And even more is remembered if they teach it to other people. So the book is something that is read, but inside the book are activities for discussion, for taking action, and doing things with the information or the content that's in the book. So I think the book offers a strengthened way to influence behavior in a positive way. Now, there is something called cognitive behavior therapy, and this book is laced with those concepts. The idea that in cognition or in our thinking, we sometimes think thoughts that are detrimental to our actions. We sometimes think things, or we sometimes have a value that we hold um, in our cognitions or in our thinking, that our thinking is kind of faulty or it's incomplete, and that those, we'll call them faulty thoughts, negatively impact our behavior. So the Dad School is offering a chance to change thinking, to change attitude, to change values, and accordingly positively influence behavior. In the book, I call that a datitude. We're trying to, you
Well,
know,
I got it.
we're trying to make have an attitude inside our thinking that makes us, excuse me, that makes us want to be supportive of our families, that makes us want to lead out and be a leader of our families.
Yeah, I mean that's and you mentioned
Excuse me.
value in there. And
Sorry.
no, that's okay. And you mentioned value in the discussion, and
Yes.
that's important because the value aspect is not just what you value in yourself, right? And you've mentioned that in the idea of offering those things, but what do you value in others? I mean, I know I realize from your discussion what you value in yourself. What do you value in others?
Everyone is redeemable. I value that in others. Everyone, it's been said, and I try to make this point in the book, even though you're not perfect, you're still needed. You're needed in this life. Our dads are needed. Uh, a dad, as I define in the book, is a supportive father. And unfortunately, not all fathers are supportive. So when I use the word dad, it's a defined term. So what I value is the fact that even though we have men that really aren't doing the job that they should be doing by their families, what I value is that they can change. They can become dads, even though they're a father, meaning they created life. We know that process. But are they being a dad? I value the fact that our country needs more dads. The statistics are in. Our children deserve a right to be raised by a dad, a supportive father. And I value the fact that it isn't good enough just to call them out on their lack of being supportive, the dad or the fathers. We have to do more. We have to encourage them. They may have had a poor upbringing in their own lives. And we have to find these folks out and encourage them and in effect, just win them over. And the book attempts to win over our fathers who are not supporting their children. I think there's more to it. I think the book can also be a confirmation for good dads. Sometimes being a dad is a lonely job. You think you're the only one holding to a certain value. You think you're the only one as a dad sometimes that you're the one holding the line on this aspect of morality or decency. It can be lonely. So this book can be a confirmation that you're on track, you're doing the right thing. I've also had young women tell me that single moms, they've told me that they like the book because it gives them kind of a guide on what to look for in someone that they might want to marry and that person becoming a dad to their children. Grandmas and grandpas who know that their son is not necessarily being as supportive as they should be for their grandchildren, the son's children, they might be interested in giving this book as a gift or somehow just giving a gentle encouragement. It is not a book of condemnation. It is a book of encouragement. And I guess what I value in others, I would go further and say honorable values. When we practice honorable values every day, that is what I call virtue. And dads need to lead in your podcast series, Leading with L.O.V.E. Dads need to lead, meaning in part leading is to be first. Dads need to be first in leading with morality, even though they're not perfect. If we lead, if we only have perfect people teaching morality, morality will never get taught because no one's perfect. So even though we're not perfect, that's what I value. I value all people. No one is perfect, but you're needed, and you're needed to lead, to teach right from wrong, to be a dad.
And that goes to the next question. So, you talk about educating, right? So this book is a textbook. I mean, this book could actually be used in a classroom, like call it fatherhood, or you call it being a dad, whatever type of class you wanted to do, even at the community college level, and you could actually present this. They could buy the book and they could actually have a class, a curriculum based on this book, based on different aspects of this whole book.
Yeah, yeah. Thank
So
you.
I mean, so that's how you educate others. But how were you educated? I mean, what was your dad like? How did you? What type of lessons did you take from him from an education point of view?
Well, my parents, they were poor. Um, my dad uh, ran away from home when he was 10 years old, ended up with a farmer. The farmer said, "You have to go to school." He said, "I'm not going to school." Farmer took him to a place up here in Grove City called George Junior Republic, and it was a residential school. he he wouldn't even tell the people at George Junior Republic his name. There's no record of him being there, but he did get a GED and left when he was 16. Had heard that his dad had remarried. Something happened in his house that he had to leave. Well, anyhow, he went back home, went back to high school after having a GED, was 2 grades behind, met my mom, which the lady was to be my mom. Her parents were dead when she was 3 years old. She was an orphan. Um, Nobody wanted her. Depression days, nobody had any money. They'd keep her here and there. Finally, when she was about 11 years old, she got a job as a kitchen helper on her grandparents' farm, earned her way. Well, they came to know each other in high school and said, "It ends here." They wanted a family. They wanted to be parents. They got married, and sooner or later, I came along. Um, they traded their wood for their rent in the Depression days. My dad had my 2 older sisters. He was called off to World War II. My mom kept on holding it all together. Well, I could go on, but the point is that I learned something about the value of a family. They didn't have it, but they made sure their kids did. And I see that as an education for me. Um, I mean, I was educated in public schools, went to public college, just learned through life and through churches. The spiritual component, I think, of being a dad is important. I think there's many ways to get at that. I think there's truth in all religions, some truth. Um, I think I've been educated through uh, church attendance and hearing sermons and this and that. And I would encourage dads to keep that as a part of how they're raising their kids, whatever their choice of religion might be, because again, some religion is better than none. Um, and it's not always right. As an educated person, I think you do have to step back and say, well, this isn't exactly so. And, you have to kind of screen out some of this. But I think your education is not just academic, it's not just social, but it's also spiritual. And I think a dad does well to keep all those components in how they're leading their families.
Well, I'll tell you, um, I want to throw this up so people can get it. This is where to get your book. It's called The Dad
Yes,
School. But now that we put that up there, I want to show people a little bit about the book itself.
sure.
So this is from my Kindle, and
Yeah.
basically this is part of the book. What I wanted people to see was a table of contents, real quick,
Okay.
because it just, I mean, it's amazing. Dignity, virtue, coping, feeding, priorities, finding your path, spiritual aspects, um, school days, low grades, anxiety, success. There's even one on sex education,
Yep.
which was one of the best chapters. And I'm not going to give it away, but if people buy the book just for that chapter, that it's unbelievable the way that you describe it and the way that you talk about it, and it's just something that is just an amazing area. And then wisdom aspects. Now in all this, and I love the fact you talk about money, you talk about different things about areas where you could take the good and the bad, right? The good and the bad of money, the good and bad of anything, right?
Right.
So you do that. You talk about divorce dads, which I really appreciate that fact, because I think a lot of dads say, "Look, I'm divorced. What do I do? I get the dad book? I mean, what do I?" So of
Yes.
course, yes, you do. Yes, you could. That's definitely for you. So what I wanted to do is I want to talk about this specific area. Let's talk about fighting, and because basically what you talk about is, again, you intersperse, you seed each chapter with a ton, and I shouldn't say a ton, but many quotations from
Yeah.
all kind of different peoples, everything from Mahatma Gandhi to, Joseph Hunter here to Albert Einstein. To, I mean, I mean, you see these chapters with all these different types of quotations, which is great.
Mm-hmm.
But here it talks about, hey, look, you know, how do you approach the idea of fighting? Do
Tough.
you say, hey, look, you need to pound this kid into, no. What you say is, you have, look, this is what I told my kids, when it comes to fighting. Tell the troublemaker to stop it. Go to a different location. Get help from an adult, right? Um, Bus driver, defend yourself until the troublemaker stops, fight until the troublemaker stops. So, and I love that, if possible, your child should talk with the troublemaker and try to understand and solve any problems prior to all of this.
Yeah.
So there's no like, hey, you put up your fist right away. This is, hey, talk it out, figure out, where does the problem lie? What happens with all that? And the whole book is like this. The whole book is just this conglomeration of different types of adages, different types of approaches that I think is something we need. And, like, the thing is, Carl, it's not just that this is for kids. As an adult, you should read this. As an adult, you should go by these steps, because think of the amount of problems that would be eliminated or mitigated just from taking these steps on fighting, just from figuring out, hey, look, this is what is the issue, and how can we come to some type of reconciliation on the issue. And I think it's just a tremendous, tremendous book from that standpoint.
Well,
Please.
thank you, Chris. Yeah. Well, Joseph Hunter is right. He said, "You put your life in the hands of any fool who makes you lose your temper." Hard to do that. Hard to keep your temper cool. But if you get carried away with your temper and you let it go, all of a sudden you've taken your life and you've put it in your hands of someone else. So it's a treacherous position to be in. And yet, it's difficult to always be a doormat and always be pushed around. So there's a middle ground, and that chapter, that book tries to address what is at least a reasonable way to find that middle ground on how to solve those kind of conflicts.
I love the discussion questions aspects. At the end of that chapter is the question like, what should a dad tell his children about fist fighting in or outside of school?
Yeah.
Okay, good discussion question. Is fighting avoidable? Does any good come from fighting? What harm comes from fighting? And you mentioned in there that, look, there's plenty of lawyers around that would love to get, somebody assaulting, a kid assaulting another kid in school, especially in high school. All of a sudden now you got yourself an
Could
assault and
happen.
battery case. This kid has a misdemeanor on his record, his or her record. I mean,
Yep.
all of a sudden you have yourself this gigantic domino effect that happens as a result of, and it's like, well, it wasn't my fault. He pushed me, he hit me. Well,
Can happen.
yeah. So it's all those types
Yeah.
of things. So comments. Anything else you'd like to add about your book? Any stories? I'd love to hear any stories that you got about your boys. Situations, funny or otherwise, where hey, look, I applied this and it does work.
Well, yeah. I mean, just on the topic of fighting, my kids had fights in high school. I had fights in high school. So some of that comes from firsthand experience trying to figure it out. Um, any other stories? Well, dads aren't always right. I can remember trying to teach one of my guys driving how to do a 3-point turn, and I messed it up. I taught him the wrong way. He went to his driver's test, and the state trooper was given the driver's test. Says, "Okay, time to do your 3-point turn." He starts to do it the way I taught him, and the driver says, "What?" Or the police officer says, "What are you doing?" "Well, I'm doing a 3-point turn." "No, you're not." So I don't know. I think sense of humor has to. You kind of have to bring a sense of humor with dads, and you're not always right as a dad, but it's your attitude. I think I've learned as I've gone on to be more patient. I think when we're younger, we want to try to get those problems solved and get them solved immediately. There's kind of a tyranny that can affect dads where they think I have to solve this problem right away. And I address that in the book of Coping. First, do no harm is what the medical profession says. And I think when dads are in trouble, let's try to keep that in mind. First, let's not do any harm because we're bigger, stronger, than faster than our kids when they're little, and their mom. Um, and once in a while, as a dad, you can get a little carried away and you can make matters worse. So I think experiences from my life suggest to me that, Carl, slow down a little bit, give yourself a chance to react, back off, um, and try not to make matters worse by your overreaction. I could go on a number of times when I overreacted and it didn't help and it probably made matters worse. Um, Not to go into too much detail, but I can assure you those times occurred. Um, yeah, I mean, I really don't know what to say, but I think the book is a self-help book. I think the book can be used in part or in whole. You don't have to do everything, every aspect. You can skip around. I say in the book, if it were a restaurant, it would serve buffet style. You can do as much or as little with any bit of the book as you want to
So
do. I think it lends
a la carte
a la
menu type
carte.
thing.
Yeah, it could be do whatever. I think it lends itself to group work. I see it maybe in men's groups. I kind of see it maybe of having some value with chaplain programs, whether it's through prison ministries, campus ministries. I just became aware that the United States Army is doing a future soldier preparation program, and they want a moral ascension component to that program, meaning they're going to take recruits that really aren't in the Army yet, but they're going to run them through a program in an attempt to get them ready to where they could actually meet the standard to be a recruit. And among the aspects they're going to look at, they're going to look at moral ascension. So I sent them a book. I sent them a copy of it. Maybe it would be helpful to those young men and women. And it, I've been approaching this as a male thing, but again, I've had women tell me that they look at this as a way to guide their decisions on who might make a dad for them. And also, if they're kind of wondering, maybe they had a poor example for a father in their lives for a dad, and they want to just see what somebody else thinks that a dad should look like, they might be interested in reading the book. So I hope it's far reaching, but truthfully, Chris, if it helps one kid have a chance of having a supportive father, then it's fine with me.
Well,
I
and I
didn't
think
do it
and I think
for
you're
any
right.
other reason.
I think it could be, not a gender specific type book. I mean, it says, the dad school, but a mom could pick that up, and those steps that you even, with fighting or with virtue or
Sure.
whatever else, you could certainly apply that even if you were a mom. You could state those, look, these are the steps you need to do if you get into a fight,
Yep.
or if it's a situation, fighting situation, this is what you need to do.
Yep.
And all of a sudden, and I don't mean to degrade the book, and I'm not,
Yeah.
but this is almost like I call them bathroom books, where you can put them in the bathroom, and you can open up a chapter, right? You don't need to sit there and say,
Yeah.
gee, I got to read this whole book, and ain't gonna
Yeah.
work. But you can
Yeah.
open it up, and you can read a couple of pages, and all of a sudden
Yeah.
it's like, okay, I get this stuff.
Yeah.
These are, like I said, a conglomeration of essays
Yep.
that do a great job. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that's the Dad School. Covenantbooks.com. It's available on Amazon. And just to let you know that this program will be both on Pod TV, and we recently got onto Amazon Fire, so it's going to be on Amazon Fire
Nice.
also.
Chris,
So,
you're doing a great job.
well, thank you so much, Carl. I really do appreciate that. And look, I really appreciate the time for the interview, and hang around afterwards for just a few minutes, and we'll discuss future programming type aspects and whatever else we need to do. Okay, so
All right,
I
Chris.
say
Thank you.
thank you so much. You take care of yourself.
Thank you for Lead with Love. Good stuff, Chris. No, really, you're
Thank you.
doing a lot of good, man.
Thank you, Carl. Take
Yeah.
care. Best of the family.
All right.
Ladies and gentlemen, that about does it for me today. I really appreciate very much your coming on and viewing this. Carl is a heck of a guy. He's done this book, The Dad School, very good book. And tune in next time. We'll have another guest with Lead with Love, L-O.V.E, learn, offer, value, and educate. Until then, please lead with love and make sure that you have all those tenets: learn, offer, value, and educate. Take care.